for a general audience, I have like my doubts around this whole AI agent movement thing. I hadn't seen
Mm.
any value so far. I really tried very hard to find some agents so I can try them. I found some workflows, but that's very different topic. It's being talked like AI agents are the next thing coming in the horizon, but it doesn't appeal to me the same way it appealed to me like Copilot and ChatGPT sort of moment.
That's a good point. Why it does not? I would love to get your
Yeah.
perspective on this. Hey everybody, welcome Nitesh. Happy to have you here today. Yeah, we've met through that startup accelerator that here in Germany, and yeah, let's say it was not exactly the best, but still, amidst all of that experience, I think our one-on-one call that we had initially and keeping up on that and staying in touch after that really was beneficial, and it was great for me, honestly speaking, to
Yeah.
see the progress and to see how you started from a simple idea but also precise, because every idea get built over time. So I believe at that time you built like a journaling app, and then slowly, and
A
that's
lot of
the
iteration.
exactly, and that's the difficult thing, because including me a little bit earlier and a lot of people, also a lot of founders, they switch a lot. And you, while you gradually hone it in, of course, will the constant iteration and everything, you stuck to the core initial idea. But yeah, right now that's Draft Alpha, which is an AI-powered brand automation tools for UX writers and marketing teams, which makes AI-generated content more structured, more general, strategically created, and more on brand and
Yep.
precise, while still being more efficient to be created and stuff. So today, I'm really grateful to be diving into a couple of interesting topics that we have in common. One of which are the reality of building an AI startup, what works, what doesn't work, what is the experience, how does it look like, and the future of AI in brand automation, a little bit specifically more to what you're building on, so how content creation is evolving, how does Draft Alpha and similar products comes into play within this new age of content creation, and how is that transforming the future. But yeah, all in all, happy to have you here.
Yeah. Thank you for having me here, man. I remember like the first time we are having this one-on-one call, and we are discussing about the journaling app because we have already done something similar in the past, right?
Yeah.
And bunch of your ideas was really useful, especially around like, when you're launching it the first time, maybe you just don't want to put some login wall or something, just try to get as many people in as possible and all that. So I think from there, I see like the degree of, your suggestions were very precise and very practical in that sense. And I remember it, man. It was really useful to follow you also as well on the LinkedIn, like what you're doing, the places you're going, the conferences you're attending. So it's really nice to be in touch.
Thank you. And also, side note, also as we mentioned a little bit before the start of the channel, we do have also multiple key, I think, interesting topics that we both share in common. So meditation, spirituality being part of it. And honestly speaking, I think that's, at least from my side, I think it's one big aspect often really not discussed about, but of being like a builder, right? Because it's the journey of self-knowing, self-learning, and yeah, basically being conscious of each of steps, missteps, and such. So I
Yeah.
think all of that comes hand to hand, I guess.
Exactly. Like something like spirituality or meditation gives you a lot of clarity, man. So
Yeah,
you have more like an inner compass through which you are navigating. Otherwise, it's
yeah,
very
true.
noisy, right? There's just too much information overload is happening. It's very difficult to make decision without having like something concrete or something stable inside you.
Yeah. Which, by the way, I want to mention, and I'll plug the channel, your channel. So Nitesh Sharma on YouTube. I will have that on the description. But yeah, let's maybe start with what is Draft Alpha. How was the journey? So we discussed a little bit about starting with an AI journal app. So let's start maybe about right there. So how did you get the first idea? Okay, I want to build something. Was it the first instance, or was it maybe after?
Yeah, so it was like almost 1 year back, right? When we were talking and when I was building the right minimal, it was like a side project.
Yeah.
And the idea was, so in my mind, it is always like some iterative progress, right? So I'm not looking to launch something substantial, but I was looking to launch just something usable within a couple of months. So that was the initial goal, to just build and launch something. I haven't done launching before that, right? So I built this simple note taking app, clean, and just built a little bit AI into it. and launched it basically, right? And that was it. And I did the launch on the product and didn't know anything about anything, but it and I just put like a $50 per year kind of a price point if you want to use the AI feature. And that was like a first end to end thing that I was trying to build, right? You can't really, because there's so much things if you're trying to build, right? If
Yeah.
you try to do everything at one go, it's very difficult to do everything, right? But the right minimal had few yearly subscriber, almost 5 yearly subscriber, right? And that is the first time I saw like you can launch something independently and then you can have people paying for it. And it's just like kind of break something inside your mind, some barrier, right? That you can actually do this. After that, I did spend a little bit more time, and because that first version, right minimal, was relatively simple, I wanted to build a little bit more complex things. And with each iteration, what happens is you start to work with more complex stuff, especially in the development, right? So draft alpha was basically, initial version was something around a content generation tool for marketing teams. It has a nice editor. It has like all the templates that you can use to build, to write the to generate the content, LinkedIn to email to pretty much all of these different platform, and a lot of special features like brand voice, consistent brand voice, target audience, talking point. Bunch of these things we built together and we did the launch on the product hunt again. But this time it has like a lot more receptive um reception from the product, and we end up second product of the day, around 500 upvotes, around 3 400 people just signed up. And we get to know like, okay, this is how you build like a little bit more complex things. At the same time, we notice building something for B2C is different, and it's just very difficult to build a business out of it compared to if you want to build something
Yeah.
around B2B, right? B2B just makes more sense, right? How many $20, $50 per month subscription you can have to build like a substantial business, right? It's very hard to do that. So then we, at the same time, I found a co-founder, and together we started to do a marketing research. Almost we did like 30 to 40 companies. We talked to them, and then we start to get to the next iteration of B2B version, which is more niche, right? So here now we are working on this brand automation for UX team. So UX team has these brand guidelines, and in every text they write, they has to be aligned with the brand guidelines. This is something UX writers does, right? So we are building platform specifically to solve this problem now, but later it's pretty much like automating the entire brand, but into the B2B context. So that's like how it goes, right? You start with something very small, but now at this point we are pretty clear we want to build a business, and trying to put everything all together.
Yeah, speaking of this kind of transition you mentioned, from your experience building at this point, and of course going through multiple stages of it, of course, multiple stages have multiple visions, multiple consciousness on what kind of ideas, what kind of scope, strategy. But at this point in current point in time, would you say that this vision is needed to be like a kind of big? So we would need to determine, okay, how can I see this in 5 years, or is it more discovering with the customer as you go?
So I think one thing we are doing very differently this time is, last both products we basically build on assumptions, right? Maybe people want this time
Yeah.
pretty much everything is being built with the customers. So right now we are doing a pilot with some companies, and they're acting almost like a product manager. We want this, we don't want this. So one thing is pretty clear, like we would like to move in that direction. Also now we have enough credibility that people, these companies are engaging with us and acting as a product managers in a way to kind of refine the products, right? So definitely there. So that is like a step by step process. We are definitely looking there, right? We want to build something in next 3 to 6 months which is profitable, where we can constantly grow, right? But also like bigger market has to be clear. So we know like we are in the brand automation business. So brand automation is just not applying the writing guidelines, right? It's also visuals, it's also building the brand identities. So like
Yeah.
as you grow up, you kind of see like, okay, whether you can move to adjacent market, whether you can expand the current market, something similar to that. Like for 3 to 6 months we are very clear, but for like
All right.
5 years we have like a very very fake idea where we are going.
Okay, okay. As you were saying, so it's stacking up. I believe the terms for it, I read that somewhere is like value life cycle from teams and departments that are using this kind of thing. So as you said, they're using that. So you stack up, and the more you stack up of their processes, the more stack up their needs, the more valuable you become. And
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
Okay. And speaking of the concept here, and the truth about these topics, and even as builders, honestly, it's a little bit too kind of unpredictable where a lot of these things are going, especially how these affects in the overall ecosystem of media, social media, and content creation, and thought leadership, even brand messaging and stuff. How do you see this affecting? So, of course, I think we see right now a little bit of the first steps of change in terms of these kind of environments. LinkedIn, for example, you can see a lot of content being created, most content being created with AI and stuff. How do you see that changing? Is this something that you think about, or is too difficult for you to imagine? How would that change?
I mean, my general understanding is like in terms of this generative AI, right?
Yeah.
There are two things which has completely changed. If I see like something like ChatGPT has completely changed how we do search, right? How I look for information. And then the second thing I think completely changes no matter in which profession you are, you have like a sophisticated co-pilots now. So if I'm an engineer, there's a cursor. And all of these co-pilots increase your productivity significantly, right? So I don't know if I'm not lawyer, but I'm pretty sure there's something for lawyers who can significantly increase the efficiency in terms of research or whatever, right? So these two things are there and they are growing and they have their use case, right? Then there's, I don't know, there's a lot of hype or a speculation how things might turn out, something like AI agents, which would be, like this is how it will interact and all these things will happen in the future, but you don't have any substantial proof that it is happening, right? So these things which are we know for sure, like the co-pilots are there and they are going to be there for people to make more efficient. There's a clear use case and they just grow like crazy, right? The cursor hits 100 million very quickly in ARRs, right? So we know like that, right? So same thing if we think in terms of draft alpha, we are trying to build the co-pilot for brand automation. People who are in the marketing team, UX team, we are trying to 10x their productivity. That's all. Right. Other than that, there is a lot of hype and speculation. It's very difficult to predict like how things will turn out. But
Yeah, exactly.
I, at the same time, I am not seeing like there's any other. So far, I'm not seeing like it's being talked like AI agents are the next thing coming in the horizon. But it doesn't appeal to me the same way it appealed to me like Copilot and ChatGPT sort of moment.
That's a good point. Why it does not? I would love to get your
Yeah.
perspective on this.
So, I mean, some things just clicks, right? So, Copilot
Uh-huh.
has a very clear use case. The use case is that I need to write a code, lawyer need to do their case, and it makes you extremely efficient to do that thing. Yeah. So it's like a clear use case. You pay for it, and same thing. Same thing like with the Chat GPT. I need to find. I have a 1 year old kid. What I need to feed him. If I Google it, it takes a lot of time. But if I Chat GPT it, it gives me plan immediately, right? So these things are totally there. But if you notice like AI agents, something like this, even their demos from OpenAI or all these people, generally their demos would be here's the image of recipe. Can you order this from Instacart? Find
Yeah.
the, what are the, who does that, man? I mean, like this, I mean, at least I don't see that's being like a use case that people are looking for, right? Or even like workflow automation. My iPhone is a workflow automation, which I never used. These are very complicated things. So I haven't seen like a use case which seems like very obvious or an AI agent which can really do something end to end. What is happening is mostly it is the same product. For example, data enrichment. You have an email and you can get all the information about that person. That is now being sold as a AI lead magnet system, something like this, right? So it's like I haven't seen any useful AI agent so far where I see like, okay, this immediately clicks.
Yeah.
That can be valuable, right? So something like this.
I think part of it also what contributes to this kind of lack of value and lack of vision, at least from the general people, into what kind of value is this going to bring, what kind of use cases, is the term agent being used really in everything right now. I think
Yeah.
everything now is an agent. And for example, so there's two type of agentic, and I think personally speaking, the types that really is going to make the difference is autonomous agentic execution. So this is the difference is instead of you, for example, you give an example of buying groceries or whatever, you can have one individual, autonomous, independent entity agent that can be just sitting there and get data and just execute on it. So, for example, whenever it sees that you don't have milk in your fridge, it's executed. The point is, most of these use cases can be programmable. So, why would you need an agent? So, that's the question. Why would you need an agent? And I think that's where you need to see the gap on the things that, okay, needs to be done, but it's difficult, hard to be programmable, and also needs to be executed in an autonomous way. Those are the two key criteria for certain use cases. So maybe what would come to mind is an executive assistant, maybe something like that. But again, could be misinterpreted as a co-pilot. But I agree that there is still kind of a way in order to reach value there.
Exactly, man. Exactly. And also, like, who is the target audience for these? Because there are some people who are very tech savvy,
Yeah.
right? And they are very good in adding the workflows and all that. But for a general audience, I have like my doubts around this whole AI agent movement thing. I hadn't seen
Right.
any value so far. I really tried very hard to find some agents so I can try them. I found some workflows, but that's very different topics altogether. That's very specific to some people. But something very general purpose, I haven't seen anything useful so far.
Right. And coming back to social media, if you were to imagine right now which like tools such as yours would be vastly adopted by brands and also by individuals, so it's at the end of the day it's both B2B and the B2C, how would the social media, how would LinkedIn look like? Would it look so much different than now? Would it be usable?
Yeah, man, that's an interesting question. So I think at some level, when I'm generating a post for LinkedIn, right? I
Yeah.
mean, you can assume that post is going to be assisted by AI, right? That like
Yeah.
pretty much all of the posts that somebody's posting is some level is going to be assisted by AI because it just
Yeah.
makes things more efficient, right? Then there is this other thing. For example, I'm watching a YouTube video and I notice like, okay, there's 5K, likes and all these things.
Mm-hmm.
That could be gamed something by AI, right? Because these could be just some kind of bots which are upvoting. You can game these kind of things. But at the same time, these companies has fairly good fraud detection system and all that. So I'm pretty sure like in long run, these things are generally weeds out, right? They won't let this happen, hopefully.
But that's bring us to a good question. Would you think that companies such as LinkedIn, other social media providers, would they do efforts in order to really filter in these kind of individuals? Because what happened right now, I see a lot of people implementing other tools for automatically comment. And you can see the comment section
Hmm.
right now, for example, in
Hmm.
LinkedIn, and you can see clearly bots being written there. So what would happen once like the content is automatically created by AI and then the comments are automatically answered by AI?
I think on the personal basis, it's not happening. Like I've seen, let's say if you post something, if I comment
Yeah.
something, there's a authenticity is there on the
Yeah.
personal social network, right? This influencer game is where the whole game is happening, right? You want to become
Yeah.
an influencer or you want to somehow cheat your way to, viral something. This is where things are happening, but these things are always happening. And pretty sure like all these companies has a spam detectors and they would probably get better with time. If something new comes, it takes a little bit time to kind of weed them out, but
Mm.
in long run 1 or 2 years probably they would figure it out some ways. And also it's such a slice, right? Not everybody, LinkedIn is not all about just influencer becoming influencer and things like these, right? So there's still the value of me and you get connected through LinkedIn is still there. If I like your post, upvoting that post and commenting on the is still there. It's this other parallel where it's all about marketing and influence, which is where all the games are happening, and there's always some games are happening on that.
And speaking of that, for your product specifically, would you add more like automation specific actions? For example, not only manually, whenever you want to post something, you get supported by an autopilot, but also programming it to maybe automatically generate and just pull the trigger and post.
Probably not, man. Because I
Why?
mean, in general, we are looking in the direction to co-pilot stuff, right? It's not like we are not looking in direction of autonomous. Because my personal belief is not aligned there itself, right? I don't think these things can work reliably. At least right now, with all the things that we have tried. So it's just not something. I mean, there's going to because you have to choose your niche in this market space, right? What are you
Yeah.
going to do, and what are you going to do really good?
Yeah.
So I think as far as I am looking, I'm not seeing in the direction of autonomous agents unless there is some kind of framework. But I really doubt it because with its autonomous agents, you are basically hooking up with other people's APIs and website and things like these, which are never as reliable as ChatGPT, for example, it because it's just its independent system. So far, I don't think we are looking in that direction to
Mm.
do the complete autonomous. We are really looking in the direction of 10x the efficiency for what you're doing
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah. One thing also that a lot of people talk about when it comes to AI generated text or AI augmented text, whatever, is its way of redundancy in the structure, in the messaging, and the wording. Is this something I'm sure you dealt with, and how do you envision this getting better, or you working on this to improve?
Yeah, I mean, you mean like the copies that comes out sounds very robotic and sounds very repetitive?
Exactly.
Yeah. So that's the problem we are trying to solve. And the way we solve it generally these problems by writing a large set of evals and kind of reiterating with all the tests that is being generated and optimizing it. So we are trying, I mean, this is the problem we are trying to solve. Right now we are doing this for UX writer where copies are generally the micro copies.
Mm.
So it's not that big of a problem. But when we are generating copy for the marketing teams, right? In that case, we have there's multiple layer of things we do, right? First we fine tune the models on like the data sets which are very much human like data sets, right? Why these things are repetitive and all these things? Because they're generally trained on the books. LLMs are basically trained on large set of books. So they write like it's a book if it is not is fine tuned that way. So we do the fine tuning on that layer. We also have eval sets, and we also have these constant iterations on our system prompts. If you see like something is off, it's repetitive, we keep updating the system prompts until it becomes like the way we want it, right? And then we try it with the different LLMs, right? So we behind the scene, we are using the Claude, we are using the OpenAI, we are using the Google, and you see with the combination, like some things are good at something, some things are good at something else. And when you're using, for example, Claude, it sounds more human like, things like these, right? So like a lot of layers. Fine tuning is one layer, this multi LLM architecture is another layer, writing the eval sets is another layer, right? So all together start generates pretty good copies.
And is hallucination also something that you still have to deal with at this point, or?
Yeah, so again like a lot of these things, once you see it for the first time, like it start to do something that you don't want to do it, you don't want this LLM to do, you start writing the test cases for that, you start writing this eval sets for that, so that it doesn't happen, right? So in the beginning, yes, hallucination as well as like copies are not the way we want it, but as it progresses for a few months, then you start becoming more and more concrete, right? Because you know your all the data sets, you know the test cases, and it start becoming better in that sense. In our case, because we are improving the copies, what we do basically is you write a text, we will run through our brand guideline checks,
Yeah.
and we improve and make it a better copy. So it doesn't generally happen because we are not generating blogs, for example.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And speaking of data sets, is this something also you notice as you were training and testing? Is that like the larger the data sets become, that the more bad or worse the answers become, or is it not going hand in hand?
Yeah, I mean, you mean like the base models which are coming with larger data sets, or like the data sets? So there are two things basically, right? The models are being trained on like larger and larger data sets, and you never know like what will be their efficiency this time, right? You plug in a new model and the responses changes, right? So that's really not in our hands, so we can't really do much other than fine tuning there.
Yeah.
We do notice because we have to put like large set of brand guidelines, and this could be like 60,
Exactly.
70 pages, right?
Yeah,
And if
that
we
sounds
send
right.
it along with as a context, that's a problem. You can't
Yeah.
really do it that way. I mean, that way just it just reads like first few page, it's just very weird. You
Yeah.
can't really expect it will read all the things. So there you need to do like a regular engineering, right? You have to break it down, you have to check chunk by chunk, you have to do this in like a multiple parallel thing, you can run it through multiple LLMs. That's like a basic engineering and system design, and that's like a kind of challenge we deal with all the time.
What kind of documents that usually people insert? Is it like posts, or is it like brand guidelines, or?
So brand guidelines are like a huge PDF, let's say 60 page, 70 page PDF, right?
Yeah.
Which are full of rules. So first thing is our job is to break down all the rules and store it in a more structured manner, rule by rule basis, right? So we can't really send like this 60 page brand guidelines to some kind of a prompt wrapper and expect like the answer would be good, right? So we just break it down. People can upload the document or PDF or whatever. We break it down, create a more structured guidelines and more structured writing rules, and then run through it in different ways when somebody wants to see whether this text is aligned with the guideline or not.
And this is one of the, if not the main use case that like you're really targeting towards. But I saw also that there are also a couple of other use cases, right? So what are other use cases that you're looking to expand on, maybe going forward?
So right now we are a lot more focused on this brand guideline for UX writers, right? Where the use cases are mostly around applying a brand guidelines, building a new brand guidelines, localization and collaboration, and these kind of use cases, right? But later, of course, we're gonna do this the same thing for marketing teams, product team, and different teams, right? And there the use case will start to become like run through this whole block through our brand guidelines, adjust it according to the guideline, see if there is any violation for any policies and things like these. So something around the compliance policies. But these are the use cases we are looking for in right now.
Is it like also, can you see, and maybe also not specifically to your tool, believe also a lot of thought leaders are using them, a lot of influencers and LinkedIn and such. How would that look different for them, for their use cases, if you were to work on for them?
You mean like, let's say if somebody is a LinkedIn influencer, how do
Yeah.
we help them with the product? Or like, how do we
Exactly.
create?
What kind of needs would he have from a copilot such as this?
Yeah. So I think it's more like content generation tool if we are building something like this, right? And generally we are sensing because we build this draft alpha thing, we are sensing like at this point, ChatGPT, Claude, they are getting to the point where you don't really need another tool for these things, right? You can upload some of your text and it can kind of write like you, right? And you can set it up more like, your personality or whatever. You can make your GPT or something like this. And basically what people are looking, just clean this up, right? Just make
Yeah.
sure like all the grammars and everything is generally ready, right? For that use case, I think a specialized tool at this point may not be a good idea actually. People are basically going to use ChatGPT kind of a tool.
Yeah. It's maybe also like I believe it's called GPTs, and just
GPT store.
exactly, and just maybe do their upload their own guidelines or whatever, their
Yeah.
own messaging, something like
Yeah,
that.
exactly, man. I mean, this use case, I mean, with the draft alpha also, when we are trying to sell that, we notice this is like almost uphill battle from here, right? Because
Yeah.
these chat GPT, they come up with the canvas, writing canvas and all these different things, which is getting to the point it becomes really irrelevant to use another tool. They are pretty good in this kind of stuff at this point. Yeah.
But speaking, that's a good. Yeah, it's a hard question to answer because, of course, a lot of people who are building this, but unfortunately need to answer it, which is what most of the people build in. Is this something you think would be at a certain point going head to head with big providers such as OpenAI with their own GPTs or other ones? Or you think still, of course, in a lot of different sectors, for example, like the one you're working towards and multiple others? Yeah, I think still the winning products would be still more other smaller builders who are really building specific stuff to their niche, specific workflows and specific answering specific needs.
Something very general as a writing or coding, like in a very general sense, is probably going to be covered by OpenAI. Even like general agentic system, workflow system, these are probably going to, because they are more like foundational stuff, right? They're probably going to be covered by OpenAI and tools like these. But as far as the niche product goes, because you need to do a lot of niche specific features, like for example, with something like Draft Alpha, we had to focus a lot on the Figma plugin, right? Because this is where the people who are into the UI would write the UI copies, and you have to sync it and all these things. So these product becomes very specific for that particular audience who needs to solve this particular problem, right? Something like this becomes like it makes no sense for OpenAI to write a Figma plugin, right? It's so niche to that particular domain. So I think still almost every niche area, if you are an engineer, you're going to have a engineer specific tools, not just OpenAI. Because whatever cursor does, because I use cursor for example, can be basically done in OpenAI, but the cursor makes it an environment where it is really efficient to do this, right? The same thing is probably in all the sectors, because it's very specialized in that particular domain, is going to stay. But something very general, just writing, just searching, just like a very general agents, probably is going to be done by OpenAI.
Just as a side note, what is Cursor? Because I'm not familiar with it myself.
Yeah, so cursor is basically, if you are engineer, you need the IDE to write the code.
Yeah.
Cursor is just like probably the most popular IDE at this point, which basically help you with
Mm.
the AI to write the code faster, right? It's very, very, very popular. Within just 1 or year or something, they just exploded basically, right? But a tool like this, I would never, I don't see like how OpenAI can replace it. Even though under the hood they're using Claude and OpenAI only, but it's just a specialized tool, makes you efficient.
Mm. And I think it makes sense. So at a certain point, it was a long time ago, people were still fighting, okay, who's going to win the AI, people trying to build their own models, maybe train them with like specific niche specific or industry specific data sets and stuff. And I think at this point, it's just clear that there is no winner of the model race and it's just going to be like a multi-model approach for everyone. It's just the real winners or the
Yeah.
real use cases are in using them. Because at a
Mm.
certain point, even now a little bit, but I think now people got a little bit more conscious about this. Everyone was asked you, is this like a ChatGPT rapper,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like it's a bad thing.
That's
Like for
like not a very smart question, but yeah.
exactly,
Yeah.
it's like saying, are you like an AWS rapper?
Yeah. I mean, like, it's, I don't know, like, it does make sense because you can always do ChatGPT wrapper, right? But it's not really a good question, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, and it makes sense because people were thinking, okay, that any value would be collected by ChatGPT, and then it is
Mm.
clearer as we proceed now through, I think, a little bit more mature use cases and products of AI. Yeah, it's an infrastructure layer, and the application layer is definitely going to be a wrapper on top of that.
Exactly. I mean, at least I think the same way. I don't see like they are going to capture pretty much all the values. It is like an infrastructure layer, very new, interesting infrastructure layer, but that's pretty much it, just like AWS.
Okay. In a way that we will have a lot of content written or redacted or augmented by AI, are we going to lose a little bit of touch on the real? Because mistakes are part of what makes us humans, even in written, even like not even mistakes, but creativity and the format and the structure and the wording and whatever. Is this going to be lost?
I don't think so, man. I mean, for me, the way my mind is processing this is just like everything is going to be 10x, right? For example, if somebody's making movies, it's like a very high production cost to make a movie, right? Now, with few people can probably execute really good movie project. The movie people can execute even harder project, right? Few, I mean, just it's just like one level up, something like this, right? So, what is going to, as far as my understanding goes, what is going to happen is you're going to see like more complex project being executed, right? So far, because with this resources you can only do this much, now everybody's leveling up one step up, right? So the 5 people team can do a 50 people team job, and you would see a lot more complex project being happened with 5 people team, right? 50 people can do 500 people per job. So it's just like, to me, for my mind, it's almost like you're going to see a lot of acceleration in growth in that
And is
sense.
that
Yeah.
is that in a way, again, completely side question, but is that in a way going to fracture the economical landscape? That means value would be splitted into, instead of value being like on top, and then of course like based on size, you would can extract as much value from the industry. For example, if you think about it, tech, the most employees you have, the most value you can generate. That means that as now the, for example, medium size also can 10x, as you said, their output.
Mhm.
Is this just gonna be all like calibrated and just everyone at 10x, and then the structure is gonna stay the same, or is this gonna fracture the overall landscape and have a little bit more of a fracture marketplace?
I mean, at least in my opinion, everything should be 10x, right? The companies like whatever the Google was able to do, Google should be 10x, it should be able to do that if everything is okay. Right? Yeah, in general, like that's how it should be happening, but you never know this economy stuff, man. Like it may change completely drastically, and then like all of a sudden mid layer becomes like cannibalizing everybody else, right? But
Yeah, because
again,
that's what they're
it,
talking about. They're
yeah,
talking, sorry to interrupt, a lot of talks right now are happening about the new billion-dollar companies being just run by 10 people or 3 people, stuff like that. And it's now possible, right? With tools like yours, other tools that 10x efficiencies with autonomous agents in the future. How do you see that?
man, it is so much out of my hand that I don't really worry about this, right? Because you have like a limited energy, or you need to kind of, I mean, you have to see the long term what is going on, but it's just you have so little agency to influence any of these things. And it's just so when the day came, right? Initially, like it was almost like all the low wage job will be gone first, right?
Yeah.
And the taxi will be self-driving taxis, and all the like lower wage job will be gone, and then it will be high, then it will be high. Actually, it is happening almost opposite now, right? All the high wage job and collar blue collar jobs are pretty much going, right? It can code now, it can do this, it can do intellectual job. All the lower wage job is right there, right? So I mean, these things really doesn't pan out very much like people imagine, right? I mean, it's just very much different. Somebody comes up with a different thing altogether and just changes everything, right? So it's very very hard to predict any of this, man.
Which is for me exciting, honestly, that we live in a time
Yeah.
where where it's unpredictable. Because when things are predictable, that means that the predictable outcome is going to happen. That means the strongest is going to win, the biggest businesses are going to stay big. But it's exciting to live in
Yeah. Yeah,
in
man.
a unpredictable time.
Yeah.
Um, which brings us, if yeah, you don't mind, to rapid fire round. Again, just like a fun thing. You don't need to take it seriously.
Yeah.
But I believe I sent it to you already, like structure of it. But I just ask you a couple of questions, and I would just need like a quick agree or disagree, and a quick just 1 or 2 sentence why. But again,
Okay.
just fun, nothing too
Cool.
serious. So first statement is AI generated content will dominate the internet in 5 years. That means every content would be AI generated.
Mostly yes, and the reason is probably like everything is going to be assisted by AI, right?
Yeah, this is as
Yeah.
you said. I think it's comes
Yeah.
yeah, goes with what you were saying. Second point is social media platforms will struggle to control AI spam.
I don't think so. Generally, they have like a pretty good engineers in terms of spam detection, fraud detection. So I'm pretty sure they will figure it out.
Okay, then that comes with the third question, which is social media platform. Are they gonna accept AI as a human would, or work in order to stop it?
I think the data is Facebook is started to build these AI personas, and they want you to interact with the AI personas. I mean, they it looks to me it is going in the direction where platform itself will start introducing these AIs, which you can talk to and all these things instead of spamming them actually.
Okay, okay. So it's a yes. And fourth one is, yeah, I think it's what you working toward. It makes sense. Marketing teams will mostly be AI driven by in 10 years or so.
Yeah, every team, man. Like every single profession that you're doing has like a pretty good, co-pilot or assistant or whatever you wanna call it, and it would be like heavily driven by AI. That's true.
Okay. For the last one is there will be an AI influencer, completely AI influencer with 100 million plus followers in the next 3 years.
It is happening actually right now. Yeah, somebody made like some AI female who had like a pretty high degree of so that's going to happen. These things will happen, but these are not like norms as far as I see. I mean,
Yeah,
generally something in the fringes would happen. There may be like few of them, but it won't be like generally like an influencer, all the
yeah.
user generated content is AI. Probably not like that.
But I've seen a lot of people going heavily also into the OnlyFans. Even OnlyFans models are losing their job now.
Probably it is this is the place where it has a lot of yeah.
Okay. And then last but not least, interesting one, AI will make most marketing team obsolete.
Not really, man. I mean, it's just like marketing team would be doing something else than just generating the content, right? So probably like again, we don't know how it's gonna evolve, but it's gonna evolve, and the evolution will happen with more acceleration. That's how I see it. The marketing
Okay.
team will be there, and it may be like, for example, everybody get like a personalized marketing video. I mean, something will change, but I don't see marketing team is going anywhere.
Okay. So maybe it's like smaller, maybe it's more augmented, faster, but still human touch is needed.
Human touch, and I mean, you will use AI to generate things, but it's unlikely that you will be just calling some agent and the agent will do all the marketing campaign and just launch it, analyze it. Unlikely things like these will happen.
Okay. Then I would maybe use the last 1 minute actually to ask more of again something I'm interested in. So you're interested in spirituality, meditation, and something important for me, as I understood it when beginning my journey early on, is that success is not unidimensional, right? So it's not only about this kind of metric, which is it could be like growth, money, whatever, but it's a multi-dimensional thing. What is success for you?
I mean, if I define success for me, or if I define like what is general happiness for me, or what is the goal of my life and things like these, I mean, there's bunch of layers, man, right? There's certain things I need to keep in balance, right? Having a good health, having a good relationships, having a good, mental states. That's like a table stack, right? If I'm not healthy, if my basic relationships are not in order, I would call myself failure in that sense, or I would call I'm not like on I'm losing on a very basic layer, right? It's like almost a fundamental condition to attempt something bigger, right? So I think this I would say like something you need to keep in balance for me to call myself as a something successful. Then on the second layer, you need to be financially free, you need to contribute to society and things like these. That is also there. If you're not able to if I'm not financially free, if I'm struggling with money, if I didn't contributed anything meaningfully, there's a lack, right? Then again, I can call myself I didn't successful. But like you see, these are like two different places where, okay, if you match all these things, then basically like in terms of spirituality, it becomes important that you work on yourself, right? You do the liberation, you work on yourself, and you find the bliss and all these things inside yourself, and that becomes like a yardstick of success, right? That you're free from everything, you're detached from everything. So I would put it in these three different layers, right? Right now I'm more into that space of like contribution and kind of getting to the place of my own financial security. So I would put myself in this layer. If I manage to get these things done in next 5 to 10 years, I'm successful. But then
Okay.
after that word, I would see like more in terms of, did I detach myself from everything and all that? So it changes with the time, right?
Exactly. That's different seasons needs like
Yeah.
different things to work on ourselves and also externally. But speaking of which of this journey, and I think as founders, as a founder, you yourself, you feel it the most. But I think it's something all maybe a lot of people are going towards right now, especially as a lot of things are happening fast into the AI, which is fear, right? Fear of losing out, fear of missing out, fear of which is a constant thing. And I think as a founder is even more extensive because is everything is could work or not work. Everything is unclear. Everything is dark. There's the path is dark. The path disappears. So how do you deal with that? Like, how would you deal with it as a founder or as anyone within any industry who's dealing with a lot of, how you deal with, would you deal with fear of the unknown, of things not working out, of you, and then of the bad side of the winning?
Yeah, I mean, like one thing, you need to take reasonable risk, right? You don't want to take a risk where you can just, damage everything. So I wouldn't probably take. So I'm not in a situation. I'm not putting myself in a situation where one thing went wrong and everything is doomed, sort of thing like that. If I'm in that situation, of course I should feel stressful, right? It's better to feel fear and stress. But yeah, just take a calculated risk, man. I mean, don't take like kind of a risk which is just destroy everything for you. That would be like one thing. But having clarity on the foundation, this is where the spirituality and things like these matters, right? Fundamentals don't change, man. Market would stay same, right? There's always going to be value exchange. It might shift somewhere. It may happen that tomorrow software engineering goes away, right? Which I spent almost 10 years learning. But it doesn't mean the market value exchange will go away. The fundamental stays same, right? So having a good understanding on fundamental, and then like, okay, fundamentally you're doing the right thing, and then aligning your life. And somebody who's living in Europe, a place like this, there's already pretty good safety net here, right? Compared to if you're living in a more places where you don't have these kind of safety nets, right? So yeah, I mean that's how I kind of perceive it, right? Get the fundamental clear and you are aligned with the fundamentals so that you don't get into this noise of hypes and this and that, and just don't take like very unreasonably risky bets.
And do you think detachment is part of it, or is it something? How do you deal with that? Are you able, would you say, at this time to have the fine balance between wanting and striving towards something and being detached from it, or would you think that this is something maybe at a later stage?
I think there was some graph, right? I don't remember what was the name, where there was like on the basic layer, you need to get this, on the medium layer, you need social life, then you need success, then you need spirituality, things like these. I still see it that way, right? It's very hard to attempt detachment or spiritual liberation or things like these if you haven't done the fundamental job of taking care of your body, taking care of your family, taking care of your finance, and things like these, right? So if you have like a good foundation, it becomes more easy for you to attempt these kind of lofty goals, let's say. But any kind of meditation, right? I mean, meditation has been part of me for almost 10 years, right? I did like 45 days silent retreats and things like these. So I
45,
think,
that's
oh
crazy.
yeah, man, I was like very much into meditation at some point. So I think
Okay.
that gives you like a solid foundation of what you want to do without getting influenced with so many noise around you, right? And that is a pretty good, I would say, foundation or spiritual foundation or detachment, you want to say, to stay centered and stay clear and keep acting in the direction which makes sense to you.
Which is brings us full circle to conclude, actually, which is exactly what I started with and exactly what I noticed, like even beyond like knowing the in-depth thought framework that you just mentioned, that you think with it, which is like that your compass is internal, right? And I
Hmm.
noticed this because I saw how you progress with your idea, with your vision, with your path, and I saw that you were not influenced. Like even like, yeah, as a side note, even when I came, for example, and I said, oh no, I did AI journaling, there's nothing there was my own thoughts, but you still like saw how you would find your own path. You would not, definitely not pushed, or yeah, it's, of course it's good, it's part of us to get external signals, but I definitely saw on a subconscious level, felt that as
Yeah.
that you have like an internal compass.
Yeah, very much the effect of meditation, man. Very
Okay.
much. I mean, that's the very good thing about something like meditation. It gives you a lot more clarity of how things are going on inside yourself, right? Even if you may not be able to act as good as you would like it to be, but your awareness is about yourself is very high. So that generally puts you in the inner compass direction sort of a way.
And that's what everyone is striving for. But yeah, as you said, it's meditation is not a fun thing to do, but that's exactly what's the reason why a lot of also people are afraid of it. Like, and you see even social media, people scrolling, even like myself, like it's just an escape from your own thoughts. Yeah, but I would definitely get a lot more in your channel. Looking forward also to hear the next updates from your product. Is there any last thoughts or any last point you want to redirect anyone listening, like who would be interested in Draft Alpha?
Yeah, man. Think I think we did a pretty good. I mean, the thing is, I'm not successful in entrepreneurship, right? So it's not make a lot of sense for me to give advice about entrepreneurship, right? While I haven't done myself something significant, right? But I think one thing is very useful is that generally we get this picture that you have to have a good idea, big idea, and then you have to raise money, and then you have to build team, and then you execute. I haven't seen in practice this happens, right? Most of the people never takes the first step. So I think it's probably a good idea to just launch anything at this point. At least building something very simple is not that complicated, right?
Yeah.
And then iterate over it. So at least the way I am doing these things from last 1 year, I've done like 4 or 5 products launch, and it does gives you a lot of, I mean, you can see different things from different vantage point. Once you start, like initially you have like a very general idea, like
Yeah.
what we are talking journaling app, right? A lot of
Yeah.
people will have an idea similar to journaling app, which is very common idea, probably not going to work, but executing that is important, because after that only you can see the other thing, right?
Yeah.
So maybe like if somebody is starting up, it's probably the best thing to just execute something and launch it, knowing this is not something is probably going to be successful, but it is going to take you to the next level.
Believing that actually the dots will connect, which
Yeah.
actually the dots only connect when you look backward, and each one's story is individual and unique to them. So happy to hear your story, Nitesh. Happy to have you here, and wish you a lovely rest of the day. And yeah, talk to you.
Same here, man. Thank you.
See you.